Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Harold, and welcome to the Hustle and Heart podcast.
Welcome.
So glad to have you out. We've
Yeah,
been
thank you.
friends for quite a few years
Yeah,
now, and
almost what, 8, 9 years?
yeah,
Yeah.
and a plethora of knowledge back from when we met each other at the one job.
Yeah.
It's you see things that you've inspired me to do, which led me to where I am today, and
Yeah. And your hustle inspires me every day,
I
man.
appreciate it. And so I think it's a great point just to kind of you had like your background and history to even the company where we met each other.
Yeah.
It's pretty intriguing because it was you were photography industry,
Yep.
own businesses.
Yep.
Um,
Several businesses before I joined the company where we worked at.
yeah. So what got you going to being a director of marketing at that time?
Well, it was kind of a really long path. I think, going back to when I was really young, my dad built a really good work ethic in me. I'm 52, or I will be 52 this year. So, in the early 80s, there was a recession and my dad was laid off. And the way we would get money for like the mortgage and stuff is we would go like do scrap metal. And back then, everyone was replacing their aluminum windows. This kind of ties into the housing market. Everyone was replacing their aluminum windows because aluminum windows were really popular in the 60s for a bit. And the problem is they just suck all the cold right into the house, right? So everyone was replacing those with vinyl. So windows and storm doors and all that would get thrown out, and we'd go like get the aluminum. And my first job when I was like 5, 6 years old was stripping the glass out of windows and like making a pile of glass, making a pile of aluminum. We'd go sell the aluminum. And then like when I was like 9, my dad helped me. He'd always take me to work with him on his little side hustles. He always had a side hustle going. He was a truck driver, but he originally, like back in the day in the 60s, would build seawalls. And so like he had me helping him weld seawalls and stuff when I was like 10 years old. So I'm like arc welding with a helmet. So like, he just built a really good work ethic. And, my original plan was to go to architecture school and I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
And so I went to Lawrence Tech for architecture. I was there for like 3 years. And then, while I was there, my mom was sick and she had cancer, breast cancer. And it got worse and worse, and it spread and metastasized. And in '98, she passed away, and I had a little sister who was 15 years old. So I wound up dropping out of school, working full time. I worked at AT&T then for, it used to be called Ameritech Cellular, then became AT&T Cellular. So I worked there for several years, and then when my sister got into Michigan State and went to school, I was like, well, it's time to live my life now. She's okay. And I quit my corporate job. I went to a convention in Florida. I was kind of thinking about doing wedding photography because I had been doing photography as my side hustle, just film photography of kids. And I went to this convention. I felt so inspired by the end of that convention. I'm like calling my 401k and like, how do I cash out? And like, well, you can't. You can only take a loan. I'm like, no, I want everything. Start a business. I'm like, well, you can't. I'm like, what if I quit my job? And they're like, well, yeah, then you could get it. I'm like, okay. So I quit my job. I was doing corporate sales for AT&T at the time. Cashed out my 401k, bought my photography equipment. And back then, compact flash cards, we don't use those anymore. We use SD cards nowadays. Mm-hmm. But a 1 gigabyte compact flash card was $799 for 1 gig. And I was like, bought like the first like really good widespread digital camera that Canon made, the 1D, and it was like $4,500 for the camera. And I spent a total of like 15 grand on equipment, right? And it was crazy what the bar for entry was back then. And then within like 7-8 years, the bar for entry is like a $1,200 camera and a couple $100 on lenses. So I started my photography business and did really well. And then the recession hit in 2008. And when that recession hit, being a wedding photographer was being like a grass cutter, landscaper in the wintertime. Like no one was getting married. No one could afford to get married. People were divorced and still living in the same house because no one could sell their house because they're all underwater. Right. At one point my house was underwater too. And so like the economy was horrible. So I was like, well, how can I hustle here? So I started this thing, FridaySundayWedding.com. If you're getting married on Friday or Sunday for $1,000, I'd show up for 4 hours, do your photos, give you the files. And, it kept me in my house, kept the mortgage paid. Right. So it was great. You have to adapt to the market. So I did that. And I always regretted not finishing school, right? But In 2000, late 2007, when I was doing this photography business, I got hit up by a lady who she and two partners were starting a company supplying photography products to the photo industry, like photo albums and prints and all the kind of things photographers would sell to their clients. And you got to keep in mind back then the market was different. Like it wasn't all this digital stuff where you could self-fulfill things. It was all you had to buy things from your photographer, right? A lot of people were still shooting film even in the early 2000s. And so she's like, hey, can you help us with just some marketing and contacting people? You know, a lot of photographers. And I was like, sure. And so I joined them figuring I was going to work for them for 6 months, make a little extra cash. And when the weddings picked up in the spring, I'd go and do that. Well, then the recession hit. And, I was like, oh, this is a decent gig. So I started doing their marketing for them. And it was 3 of us in a basement in Ann Arbor, well, Saline really, in their house basement. And we started this business. And within the first year, we did like $1 million in sales. And, like I said, it was 3 partners and I was there and there was a tech guy. And then they brought on a marketing girl to help out, like a marketing assistant / customer service. And we were just running this business. And I was there 1 day a week and worked from home the rest of the time. And then I started traveling for them. And then next thing you know, I became their marketing director. And realistically, you'd probably call it a chief marketing officer position because I was basically running their entire marketing for the company. At the top, before I left, we were doing about 10 million in sales a year. And it was a really great experience. I got to do everything from project management, small projects, all the way to like building huge displays in Vegas. Like I would do the architectural drawings. It was really fun. And then so while I was at that job, the managing partner was really great. She was a good lady. She's passed on now. A little crazy, a little fun. It was kind of like I used to joke around. It was like the Devil Wears Prada. I was like Emily in the Devil Wears Prada, like the Anne Hathaway character. A really funny story. I remember she was an older lady. She was like in her 60s. And I was in my 30s at the time, and we were really good friends, and we'd argue and stuff and hang up on each other when we were debating like where to go with marketing. But we had a really good working relationship. And I remember she's doing a speaking engagement. She's like, oh, Harold, I forgot my makeup. I forgot my lipstick. Can you go in my bag and just grab it? It's right on top. And I remember reaching in her bag and grabbing like what I thought was in her suitcase, what I thought was her makeup bag. And I'm holding old lady panties in my hand. I'm like, oh, I'm touching my boss's panties. And it was like, but that's the kind of like, you talk about like the grind of a startup.
Right.
Like that's the thing. You just do whatever you got to do. I was going to go into this lady's suitcase and grab her makeup bag. And the next thing I got the wrong end of that deal. Right? I got a wrong deal there. But, I found her makeup bag, got it to her. She went and did the speech to like hundreds of people and we got business off it. And so, that went on for a while. And then her husband got more involved and he was a little bit intense / insane. And like he had private airplanes, like Cessnas and stuff like that. Actually, I think he had a Moody, but he had this one airplane. It was an old World War II style biplane, and it was yellow, and you could tell it was his plane. But he'd fly over the parking lot at like 5 o'clock to see if people were still at the office, make sure people didn't leave early. Like he was a little bit intense, right?
That is intense.
And so I was like, I got to get out of here. But the problem was we were coming out of the Great Recession and jobs were still hard to find. I mean, like a lot of people who are younger don't remember, but like during the Great Recession, I knew more unemployed people in Detroit than employed people. Like, cause everything was tied to auto companies. Everyone was just like hurt for cash. And so everyone was unemployed. And so, everyone was hustling back then. And so coming out of that, jobs were still hard to find. And I remember I talked to a friend named Fazine, and Fazine had moved from photography back in the corporate world. And, we were talking and she's like, oh yeah, I made this jump and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I think she said at the time, like, she's like salaries for the position I was looking at where she worked at Rocket at the time or Quicken Loans back then was like 70 grand. I'm like, 70 grand? This is great with benefits and everything. And like, but like I started looking around for jobs and I realized like I didn't have a degree. And not having a degree at that time was really hurting me because what I found out is, so when the economy's great, like it was like during the pandemic where they need help, everyone gets a job, right? But when they start needing to cut the applicant pool down, they start all of a sudden saying bachelor's required. right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's really bad, the economy, they start saying masters required for jobs, certain jobs. And so they cut their applicant pool down. And I realized that like, I didn't even have a bachelor's. So here I am as like basically like the chief marketing officer of a startup. And I can't get a basic job for a marketing intern position, like, or a marketing admin position because I didn't have a degree. I couldn't get through the system, the applicant tracking systems. And so I decided to go back to school. So I went to Walsh College. I got my degree in marketing. I finished that in 2016. And then, you have to make job jumps
Right.
in order to like raise up your pay. So I think at that time I was making like 45 grand a year at the startup. I was way underpaid for what I was doing. But then again, I got to travel all over the place and they paid for my travel 100%.
Which is nice. Trade off.
And yeah, like it was great. I was on the road like 3.5, 4 months a year and they paid 100%. They didn't question my expenses. I was good with their money, but they didn't question me. So there were benefits to that job. I got to go party with my friends everywhere. Actually, for the first year of that business, my job was to get people to come to parties. So I was basically like a concierge host. It was great. And, so I wound up getting my degree and I started applying around and a friend's wife, had a business that she inherited from her parents' legacy business and she was trying to modernize it. So she gave me an offer of like 75,000 a year. And I was like, sweet, that's great money. I'm making 45. And so I took that job. And I was there like a year and a half and I kind of realized that that company wasn't going to grow like she thought it was. And we were just kind of underpricing products. It was a good company. Like they made great products. It's just like our positioning in the market wasn't great. Mm-hmm. So, I started looking for a new job and, she and I just decided that was probably best because like, she could save my salary. And so, started looking for a new job and that's when I got the offer at Vanguard where we met. And, Vanguard was an outdoor company and I wanted to work in the outdoor industry. I've been hunting and fishing for years and it was great. And so we met there and, when that offer came through, I actually fell off my chair at my old job at the company I was working at. Cause like I remember I stood up when I saw it and then I went to sit back down and my chair had rolled back and I actually fell on the floor. When I sat down because the offer was for 99,000 plus bonus. And I was never in my world thought I would make that kind of money. Right.
It seems like far out of reach.
Yeah. And so like it's true that if you want to make more money, you do have to jump jobs because the people that where you work, they put you in a box, right? The people you work with that like, Tom is only capable of this. And that's all Tom will ever be capable of. That's all Harold will ever be capable of. And so like when you go to a new place, like it's a blank slate. Now you get to build that box again over what you really want. And you keep building those boxes, as you move to different places until you get to a position where you're not in a box and you have a job where people let you do what you do best, right?
Like the framework in some, other brokerages, how they're built, it could very well be built in a corporate life to where this is all they're offering on a pay plan split.
Right.
And additional fees, like if you just change your mindset and perspective on how that might appear, it can be the same thing. And you're like, this is all I'm going to get. And they make it seem like this is the best thing that's out there.
Yeah.
But really there's a lot of other greater opportunities by just making the right jump.
Yeah. Position in a different place in the market. You're handling like clients that are like a higher clientele.
Yeah. Understanding like your value propositions. I mean, there's programs out there, there's some like lead generations that come in that, we could be involved with or other places have been involved with where depending on after that, like that company's taken a split from what we're getting anyhow, but then also some companies will add on an additional fee.
Yeah.
So really now you're back into that middle management corporate lifestyle, which a lot of realtors get out of that game to avoid, and you're right back into it.
With realtors, like the low man on the totem pole or low woman on the totem pole, and they get the lowest amount of commission out of that whole deal, or they get what's left.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it like through just having conversations. You're just being observant, at the industry, and you can quickly see how they put them in this bubble, like this box, where it's just like, hey, this is where you're going to be at, and you got to work your way, kind of like having the bachelor's degree.
Yep.
And I remember we had that conversation before, which encouraged me to finish my one degree. Because you're like, you need to have this one.
Just open the door.
Just open up the door. And it's the same thing. It's like that whole saying where it's because someone else ahead of you has that degree, you need it. And it's the same thing in real estate where some people think, maybe they think, I'm assuming that they do, is like if they're a broker's license for so long, or they're not even a broker, like maybe they've been a realtor for 10 years. Yeah. Like, well, because I did it, they have to do it.
Yeah.
But what I've heard and what I've seen though in real estate is the change is happening where those that are marketing's more and more important nowadays, and there's different so many forms like we know about,
Yeah.
in that there are agents who have a great brand social media wise, or networking wise, and they are clients that older like 10-year agents are like, oh yeah, they're always my client, that they're going to these new agents because they're more apparent, they're at the forefront, and they have a great marketing plan
Yeah.
and they're authentic. Like, so there is some similarities, which is interesting
Yeah.
to see.
And I think what's really interesting about agents and being a realtor, like I want to really stress that you don't need a college degree to be successful in life. I mean, like I put a lot of emphasis on it because my path is more of a corporate path, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a side hustle. Like I want security of benefits and insurance and all that for my wife. And but it's not everyone's thing, right? But I also like having a side hustle and like little side projects I work on. So I think if you have a corporate job, having a second income stream is important.
Mm-hmm.
But college isn't always the right path. Like some people go into the trades and become a plumber and start their own plumbing business or electrical. You know, you chose to get your realtor license and you're a realtor now. So you don't always have to take that path. But like even if like you don't have, you want to go on more of the corporate path, but you don't want, like I'll use technology as an example because that's the field I'm in. I work in information security now. Like you don't have to have a college degree, but it helps to get your foot in the door. But what really helps too is getting your certifications. Just
Mm-hmm.
like a realtor license, you get a specialization in, like I know this programming language. I have this like CISSP cybersecurity certification. That's what helps also open doors once you're in a company or even when you're applying, right? Seeing those certifications because you've studied, you passed the bar. There's a certified test like being a project manager. I'll use my sister as a prime example. You know, she makes 3 times what she made 4 or 5 years ago because she went and got a project manager certification, spent $2,000 to get the certification, right? Yes, she has a degree, but it's in zoology, right? So it doesn't really apply to project management other than like corralling animals, which sometimes working with people on a project can be like that. Like you can get a certification and you can move forward in your career. I chose the college path. And so like getting back, so like I finished college, I got these jobs, I met you. And then what's really interesting, I think, about where we were working is I quickly realized when I was at the company before that, oh, I'm going to go get a master's degree. Because I remember during that pandemic, during the Great Recession in 08, 09, all the jobs that said, you must have master's required, master required. So I was just like, I never want to be the bottom person in the applicant pool. So I'm going to go get a master's. Plus, I kind of fell in love with education. I had a really good professor that I fell in love with the way she taught, and I fell in love with education. So I went and so to go back for a master's before I met you. And so I was in that process while we were working together. And it actually worked out really, really well because, you and I met, we bonded instantly. I was hired in as the North American, what was my official title? It was, what was it? It was director of marketing or something like that for North America. Yeah. And Tom worked for me he was originally a salesperson when I met him.
Yeah, started out as like inside
sales. Yeah, and then you kind of made your own position in marketing, you kind of bridged because you were so good at marketing and sales together.
You were full in.
And we bonded because we worked for a guy that was former military, very no BS, nice guy, right? But very direct. He kind of just trusts you to do your job. This is the requirements I need. Here's your budget. Do your job. And then he got let go or left the company. We don't really know. But then the CEO from overseas was our new boss. They didn't backfill his position. And so we bonded over some of the craziness of having to deal with like communicating with the factory back in China and the different cultural stuff that we had to deal with. And then, we had our own coworkers that would sometimes work against us. But the nice thing is like Tom and we had a great marketing team. It was myself as the director, Tom was the second in command. And then we had Jacob, who was doing our photo video, who was freaking amazing. Like if I ever need a photo video person at a corporate job, I'd hire him in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
And Jake was absolutely amazing. And then we had Kayla, who did amazing graphic design. Like she put together an annual catalog. It was almost like one of those catalogs you'd see like a parts company give you with thousands of products. But we had probably 200-300 products, individual SKUs,
and it was new ones every year.
Yeah, new ones every year, right? Like it was like car manufacturers come out with new stuff every year. And so she put together a great catalog for us. Like we had a really great team. And what was interesting about that is like, just when I talk about like the cultural differences, I remember like I had Tom and Kayla and Jacob all working this one office down at the end of the hall. It was like really cool, like dark, moody space. Everyone loved it. And then I was in a little separate office. And I remember one of the people who was kind of like the watchdog for the CEO back in China. She once said to me, like, when I put you guys in that office, she went to the CEO and complained and got you guys moved out of that office. And she's like, well, why are they in there? I'm like, well, because we can collaborate and work together and like, brainstorm and just like, I want this collaborative environment. She's like, well, how do you know they're working if you can't watch them? And I thought it was such an interesting cultural thing. Like, cause like, like I don't need to watch you because I see the work getting done, right? That's how I know you guys are working, the quality of your work. And I think I've taken that into like leadership moving forward as like, you judge people not based on what they're doing, you judge them based on the quality of the work. So if I have a team member and they have, like X amount of code to write, or they have a website to build, or whatever it is, and, they're working 40 hours a week, but they can do their job in 20 hours a week, good for them, right? Like I'm not going to like super overload them and give them the work of two people because they can do the job in 20 hours. I'll say like, hey, maybe we can do this or maybe we can do that. And I'll get them to work more and nudge them into like, learning something new or building their skills during that time too. But like, you don't want to overload someone because they're talented and they can get stuff done.
Right.
And I think the difference too is you have two type of people. You have the type of people who will be like, oh, I'm really good and talented. I can get my work done in 20 hours. And they don't want to work anymore, right? Well, they're getting paid to do a certain job. If they can get it done quicker, good.
Right.
But then you also have people, I think, like you and I, who are like, okay, well, I can get this job done faster than most people, so I'm just going to use that time to like do more stuff, right? And grow in a different way. And like I remember when we were working together, you created an influencer program, right? And like I think our return on investment was like 300% on that.
Yeah, it was pretty.
It was like absolutely amazing. And so like that wasn't something that was part of your job description, create an influencer program. You just went and did it. I think all I had to do was plug the tech in on Shopify to get our affiliate program.
Yeah, you just plugged the tech, and it was and honestly, like the idea came in that proposition. I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And I didn't come. There was no like experience from when that idea even came. I was like, this makes sense. Yeah. But now looking back, like you built like it was a proposal that had it was a multi streamlined component to where it wasn't just what we called back then like ambassadors and now it's influencers. It wasn't just them. There was also a component that was to get dealers involved, to have these folks go out to dealers, and then also we were direct to consumer and business to business as well. So like it was multiple approaches to make this program successful. Yeah. Which is pretty cool just to kind of think about it. And I was thinking actually a couple months ago, I think it was, and I posted something about it, it's being like if you were, I guess, corporate life, or if you're independent, like in real estate, but speaking just on corporate life, if you get around like the right teams, because those that allow you to take these risks, is what's going to build that resume in the long run. And then when you're going to go look to the next job because you're like, okay, I've capped out and I'm not going to make any more money, that's what makes you more credible against the component that's trying to go for the same job, was by taking those risks. Yeah. And it's interesting thinking back to, other interviews that I had, was where, some of the folks would say, hey, there's not enough, or there is more skills here. And that really was always the risk that made you that more credible.
Yeah. And I would always tell my team when I was working in technology at Rocket that I expect you to fail more than you succeed. Mm-hmm. Because if you're failing all the time, you're learning and we're growing, and then you're going to hit some things out of the park, right? Like you're going to hit those home runs, and those home runs are what really, like you were saying, those things that, are milestones. They go on your resume. They can go from like at a corporate job on your annual review, right? And in the startup world, those Hail Marys that you throw sometimes are the things that make you $1 million business or a $10 million business, or, if you're lucky enough to become a unicorn and you're like, $1 billion business, right? Like, those risks are what matters. You cannot play it safe, but you have to play it safe enough to still pay your bills,
right? Yeah,
company, right.
Yeah, and fostering a good relationship.
Yeah. Like don't have a strategy that's working and the company's doing well and making some revenue, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to throw this out because I want to go in a different direction. No, like you like use that revenue to build on your new idea. Um, so it was interesting because, like, you left first, like, and our time together at that company was only like 8, 9 months. I
Yes.
think I
Yeah.
started in February and I left in December.
Right.
And you left before me, and I remember like, oh, I hate this guy, man. He just left me hanging here with these people. Um, so it got really, really bad. It got to the point where, like, I think my budget was like $1,050,000 when I started, and then when our managing director got left, and then the new CEO came in and took over micromanaging, my budget dropped to 25. Or I'm sorry, dropped to zero. So if I want to spend like $25 to boost a
Yeah.
Facebook post or an Instagram post, I had to beg for money and basically build a business case. Spend $25. It was the
It was
craziest thing
pretty crazy.
ever.
I remember because we had to build out that catalog
Yeah.
for Shot Show, and
For those of you that
we
don't know, SHOT Show is the big like gun industry trade show in
right,
Vegas.
yeah.
People come from all over the world.
That's why we'll have to talk on that too. But like, yeah, I remember we couldn't even send out a return label with a pair of like binoculars
Yeah,
to an ambassador of ours or a photographer for them to take photos for us to input in this catalog because they didn't want to cover the expense of the return label.
yeah,
It's like the disconnect. It was a learning experience,
yeah.
and the cultural disconnect is crazy. But like,
I,
what I've learned now is life does like we want to know like what life is right now in the future, but we don't.
yeah.
It only makes sense when you look back in reverse and what life is and why we've experienced
Yeah.
some things.
I know some people believe in God. I'm not a God person, but I believe in fate, and the universe always puts you in the place you need to be. Put us together for a reason, and it was a short time, but we're still,
Mm-hmm.
together doing things years later. And then, but yeah, like, and it was a really good learning experience. Like, I'd like to talk about this a little bit later when we're chatting, but I've learned more about being a good leader from my bad leaders than my good
Mm-hmm.
leaders,
Right.
right? You learn what not to do, and how not to treat people. And I think the thing I learned from that experience was just how not to treat people. Like, you really need trust. You hire good people, you trust them to do their job. And, you do this trust but verify thing, like you look at the or the monthly metrics, you look at the work they're outputting, and you're just verifying the qualities there. And as a leader, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to encourage them and help them grow.
Right.
And what's interesting is you left the company, and I feel so bad about this even to this day. There's things that you have to do when you have a corporate job or a job that you don't want to do, but you just have to do it because you need to get a paycheck. And you left, and I was continuing on doing the marketing. And then I think, I don't remember if Jacob or Kayla left next, but the video guy and then the graphic designer both left. And then I was left. I was hiring to replace. Actually, I think it was Kayla left first, graphic designer, because I was hiring for a new graphic designer, and I had hired someone in, but then I got my job
Oh yeah.
offer at Quicken Loans / now
It's like
Rocket
within a week or
Mortgage
2 weeks.
within like a week of hiring this person, and like the day they were starting was like my last day there. And I was basically like, here's the keys to the shop, dude. You're in charge of the whole marketing team. And he was just like a graphic designer. And I'm like, I felt so bad, but like the timing just worked. Like, I had hired him in and I had gotten an offer. And so I got the offer to go to Quicken Loans Rocket Mortgage in a position called a product owner in technology. It's kind of like, the best way to describe it, in the movie Office Space, there's the guy, they're like, well, why don't the engineers just talk to the customers? He's like, the engineers can't talk to the customer. That's kind of my job. I was that guy, because like engineers and the business people in the business, they speak different things and want different things. And so I was like the middle person that would like talk to the business people, understand the business side of business, and then translate what they wanted into the technical side so the engineering team could do it. And I was kind of like a project manager slash sometimes therapist slash mediator. Like, you kind of wore multiple hats depending on what you were doing. And I absolutely loved that job. And it was a great job. I had a great engineering team, super talented people that taught me a lot. I had some great leaders. I had some pretty bad leaders too while my time at Rocket, but I had some amazing leaders. And I had a leader like, Rocket is kind of like, and people who've worked there will tell this. It's a really good company, good benefits and all of that. You get to work on enterprise level, technology, cutting edge stuff. Like when AI first launched, we're already working on like AI voice assistants there. Like, it was great, but it's also a finance company. If you've ever seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street or Boiler Room, where like Wolf of Wall Street. Like I remember where like the guy had the goldfish, and they're like, "What are you doing having a goldfish on launch day on IPO day?" And like eat the goldfish. The finance people at Rocket could be a little bit like that, right?
Yeah.
And some of those people then worked in technology, and a little bit of that culture bled in, where you were never good enough. Like what you did, like was never like they always wanted more from you. And so they kind of beat you down a little bit to kind of keep you feeling a little insecure and wanting to perform more. And that's how I felt. Like not everyone feels that way, but that's how I felt. And so I had an engineering leader on my team that I was reporting to one leader who was an engineer. He was amazing. And then I had another leader that started leading the engineering team that I was working for. And that guy was super great. Greg, we're great friends nowadays. He came from a startup. He had his own tech startup. And then he wanted to go back in the corporate world. And Greg really encouraged me to go back into leadership, which I didn't think I wanted to do at Rocket. And so I applied for this position that was like perfect for me. It was a combination of photo, video, technology, all mixed together. It was like we would do all the photo, video for the technology. It was like leading a tech communications team, and then I would do like side projects where like we built this awesome website to help homeless veterans find services, right? So it was like one of those things where like you can build your own position, right?
Right.
It was really great. And so I did that until, the housing market sucked. As we all know, you guys in the real estate industry, interest rates went up to like 7.5%. Rocket Mortgage's business was like, and I'm pulling these numbers out of my butt because I don't know the numbers, but it's like 85, 90% refinance at the time. And so when no one could refinance, they talk about it in the mortgage business of things being out of the money. So like let's talk about if there's 100 houses that are built and you have 100 people living in them, you would expect a normal turnover of like maybe 10 or 20 to sell every year, right? But during the pandemic, so many of us got those 2%, 3% mortgage. Like I have a 2.85% mortgage. Like I'm not selling my house, right?
Right.
So, and for me to refinance, if you're a company that would built your business on every couple of years, we're gonna get you to refinance to a lower rate, and then we'll make another $6,000 or $7,000 off you, and you'll multiply that over millions of people, right? If you're that company, and all of a sudden now the majority of the houses, I think at one point they said like 82% of houses in the country were out of the money, meaning that their current mortgage rate was lower than the posted mortgage rate available now.
Right.
And so those people aren't selling unless they have to, and they're not moving, and they're not going to refinance. So like Rocket's business got hurt, and they started doing a bunch of layoffs. I think I went around 4 of layoffs, and they're still doing them, throughout time because they've had a couple mergers, and the mortgage business just absolutely decimated. For all the faults, I will say that Rocket Mortgage had as an employer, it also had some amazing things where like we got to, like I said, work on enterprise technology. We got to do some great charity projects, like building that project for homeless vets, that website. And it's still active and out there today. So like every day that website saves lives, right? It's amazing.
That's amazing.
And that was all, I got paid by the company to work on this project I worked on it for like 6 months. It was great. And in addition to doing my normal job, like it was a side hustle we would do in our spare time at work. That's once again that, I can get my job done in 20 hours. What am I going to do with that extra 20? That was the thing. And that's the thing I put on my resume is that veterans website, because that was a huge project, right?
Huge.
And
that's impactful.
Yeah, and I work at Walgreens right now in cybersecurity, and actually that website I think got me my interview because when I was talking to the recruiter and I mentioned that site, she's like, "Oh my God, my whole family was in the military. That's so amazing!" Like, and we made this connection and we started chatting. So like that side project at work got me my interview for the job I have now. So it's pretty awesome, and but yeah, so Rocket had some amazing things, and I will say. From a technology standpoint, like I'm a Rocket Mortgage customer right now, and as much as I'm like, looking back, like there were some bad things I didn't like about working there. Their technology is so amazing. Like I can't imagine being a mortgage customer of another business because like I can log in the app, I can do pretty much anything I need in the app. Like everything's there. Like it's awesome. I'm really proud of some of the work that we did while we were there. So then I got laid off, and State of Michigan had this great program. By the way, if anyone's looking for a program, State of Michigan through Michigan Works has where they'll pay for you to get certifications or re-education, And depending on the year and what their grant money allotment is, it varies on how much you get. But I got like $5,000. I was able to go to take my course to get a PMP certification, a project manager certification, and my CISSP certification. Now I still need to study and do the actual test, right? But I wound up landing a job, and so I was like up on ramping for like 8-9 months. So I didn't have a chance to study for those two things, but that's something I need to do because I want to get those two certifications. But yeah, the state of Michigan has great programs through Michigan Works, and it's not something they advertise, so you have to ask about the grants they give for retraining. But it was a great program, and so I did that during the pandemic, and then a friend of mine got me a gig, or she told me that like, hey, they lowered the requirement for substitute teachers. I was literally, before I got my job at Walgreens, I tell my director this all the time, that he saved me, and he saved everyone else in the world from me starting an OnlyFans account. Because I mean, we're not talking about retirement savings, we're talking about cash on hand. I was so destitute before I got that job, like I was going to start an OnlyFans account. That's how desperate I was for money. And I was substitute teaching, and I was an adjunct professor, but my adjunct professor job ended in April because the semester ended. Substitute teaching was going to end like June 1st. And I wound up starting my job at Walgreens June 3rd. Yeah. So like he literally saved the world. And I remember like when I was driving out to Chicago for training for that first month, because they get paid monthly, by the way, at my current company. So like I had to wait.
Oh yeah, you got to wait till that
3-4 weeks to get my first paycheck. And I was literally like a stripper paying for gas on the way to Chicago with singles I made at my garage sale that summer. Like I had like $400 or $500 in singles I'd be paying for gas.
But you still had that core hustle from childhood and
yeah,
even going through what you were describing earlier. Like helping with the scrap metal and doing the windows and like that's like it doesn't scare you. You don't want to be in that situation like you were. But thinking that way, like you find a way. You find a way to get through it.
Exactly. And now I'm just like, I've been working remote in Detroit for like the last month. I normally work 4 days a week in Chicago. I'm working remote, and like I've been using the extra time to like learn Python and up my skills and learn a programming language. That's really useful for like data analytics and even building websites and that. But so it's just trying to fill my time with like learning new things and doing things. And it's been really great. You talk about good leaders and bad leaders. I have a really good leader now, a good people leader, who trusts you to do your job, and I like that. I find like my personal style is I do best at a job when someone just says, this is what we need to get done or we want to do. Throw me your ideas, and then I'll kind of just give you the runway to get it done. Right. And that way I'm not being micromanaged and told like how exactly to do something. And it gives me the freedom, like, you have black and white people. I'm a gray area person. Like stop signs and parking lots are suggestions, right? They're not stop signs. Unless there's people walking in front of you, then it's a requirement. But, I like living in the gray area. Like, you told me I need to get this ABC thing done. But if I can get it done by, going in a different direction, and maybe like leaning on another team and having them help with some work, and that's kind of a gray area, right? Because that's not something that I was supposed to do, but like it's something I can do, and we get the work done a little quicker, or it gets done a little better because we're doing something. Right. I prefer working in that type of environment, and actually Rocket was really good with that, with like letting you just kind of run with things. I remember going to my leader. I had a leader named Dave Negron, and he's amazing, people leader, amazing engineer, and I'd go to him with some crazy idea, and he'd be like, yeah, go ahead, let's try it. And then on the reverse of that, I was always very honest with people, which sometimes corporate people do not like you being honest with them. And so sometimes he'd call me up and he'd be like, so-and-so called me, did you say this to them? And I'd be like, yep, I said that. And they're like, this is why I said it. And it's this. And so I would always like own up to what I said, right? Because like I didn't say it out of a place of malice. You have to sometimes be honest with people, and unfortunately a lot of people don't like honesty.
No, they don't.
Right. I see like my sister deal with it as a project manager. Projects are going off track, and then someone's like, well, can I just add this, or someone else like, can I add this? Or you got like 10 different people wanting to add one little thing that's going to add a day on. And then next thing you know, your whole plan's blown away by 2 weeks, right? And so, I see her having to hold that line, and saying no is a really hard thing. I remember, so Rocket had these things called isms, right?
Right. Yeah. I remember sharing
It's
these.
kind of like, so when you join a big company, for those of you that work for a big company, it's like joining a cult, right? And that cult has a culture, right? Whatever it is, like liken it, and I don't mean to liken religion to cults, but like liken it like you have if you're a Catholic, you have one thing you believe in. If you're Lutheran, another. If you're Jewish, another. Muslim, another, right? So liken that to company culture. And each culture has its own belief system and its own way of operating. And so Rocket had this belief system called their isms. And I think when I left, there were around 20 isms. I don't remember the exact number, but one of them, a key one, was yes before no. And in the spirit of this rule was really good. It was, and the owner of Rocket, Dan Gilbert, who owns the Cleveland Cavaliers and owns like 100 buildings downtown Detroit, he came up with these. But yes before no, the spirit of it is, consider saying yes to someone before you just outright say no. Like, is there a way we could possibly help you out and get something done before we have to say no to you, right? So that was the spirit, but people would weaponize it. And I remember I had to say, and this is the pandemic now, so this is a crazy time. We're doing like $30 billion a month in mortgages. And, people are coming to me and going, as the product owner, people come to me and it'll be like, hey, we got this project we need to get due. We're estimating it'll bring in $100 million in revenue. And then someone else, we're estimating next year this will bring in $1.2 billion in revenue, right? So you're dealing with these crazy numbers that are just, when I tell people these numbers, they're just it's like monopoly money. It doesn't, people can't comprehend. So I remember this VP of marketing came to me and he was like, oh, we got this project we need to do, blah, blah, blah. It's going to bring in an estimated $100 million a year for next year. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Well, what do you mean you can't do it? And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Well, I've got this project that says they're bringing in $4 billion. I got this one that says they're bringing in 1.3. And so we don't have the ability to do this $100 million project. And he just what do you mean it's $100 million? I'm like, I'm sorry. I got these other projects that are estimating way more. And just the amount of money we were dealing with was just insane. One system I owned generated $32 billion in mortgage value in a year. It was crazy. One website.
It's wild.
And so I remember this person complained to my leader, and he weaponized that ism, that yes before no. He calls him and he's like, yes, Harold has a no before yes attitude. Harold needs to have a yes before no attitude, right? And so this is where in big companies, sometimes culture gets weaponized, right? And so it was an interesting time during the pandemic. It was a great job, but the culture was definitely interesting. And what I think I found about moving to different companies is the culture definitely differs. And so I was saying, a little bit about. The one thing that I liked is the other thing that's different is your culture at your companies, your experience is really dependent on your leader, right? And talk about leadership. I mentioned earlier how I learned more from my good leaders than my bad leaders. The people who drank the Kool-Aid, and that's kind of a cult reference to this back in, what was it, the 70s, there was a cult leader, Jim Jones, who gave people poison Kool-Aid, right? And they all died. But the people who drank the Kool-Aid at the company and were super into the isms, they were some of the worst people to work for, because they were so almost bent on showing that they were into the culture that they didn't really live what the culture meant, right? I think we find that as well. I found that when I went to Catholic school, right? We had some people that were super I had relatives that had to go to church every week, right? Had to go to church, had to put on this good, look to the outside world, but they were crappy people, right? And they were sinning all the time and stuff. And so I think that happens at companies too. You have the people that put on this this fake persona that they're like into the company culture. Some of them actually are into the company culture a little too deep. And then they forget why we're there. And we're there just to like, as a leader, we're there to make our team members' lives better every day. Like, how can I clear roadblocks? How can I make work the least stressful place you come every day and make it a fun environment? So like, you've got stress in your personal life. You've got, family stress. You've got all this stress. Coming to work should not be stressful. You should have a good time. You should have fun, get your work done, and go home and not feel like, you've had a bad day all the time. And you shouldn't dread coming into the office, right? So I think as a good leader, that's what I've learned from all those bad leaders I had. Like, bad leaders don't protect you from the stress. Bad leaders, if their leader is coming down on them, they come down on the team. You shouldn't do that. If your leader came down on you because you missed a deadline, you figure out how to inspire your team to meet the deadline next time. You don't come down on them for missing the deadline, because all that does is bring down morale, and it kills your team, right? So, and like I said, when I think of like some of the bad leaders I've had, the guy who would fly over the parking lot and see if people were still at work at 5:00. He didn't do it every day, but he'd do it once in a while, enough that like people were like worried. That's an example. Leaders that kind of fly off the handle at little things. You talked about, we had a leader who, wouldn't let us we would send out sample products, and we'd want to pay for a return shipping label to make sure it came back to us, and they didn't want to pay for the return shipping. Like, that's an example of just bad leadership, right?
There was this disconnect of really understanding how business operates in America versus other countries. And
the cultural disconnect is huge.
When things are going, this transpires into so many things other than just business as human beings, but like when things are going well in life, great. But as soon as shit hits the fan, you retreat to your insecurities through moments of adversity. If you aren't well grounded, and you're like, we all have those moments, but you have to be self-aware to pull yourself out. And it doesn't matter where you come from, like, it can happen. And like you said, like the culture of the team, like I've taken that even when the job I went to after that, and you realize like it wasn't good. Like, I made sure to keep my culture and my team great. And I know we had phone calls a couple of times, and I had a little like book journal. I write ideas, whatever it might be, and in the back, but I put what not to do when I own my own business. Because you had to flip that script, and it sucks. Like, there's days that are horrible when in those situations, but then there are good components that come from it. And there are good moments, but there are always building moments.
I remember I worked at a business where the owner had a motorcycle collection. He was buying these motorcycles as they were telling us that they couldn't afford like raises and bonuses, and they were stored in the warehouse. So every employee had to walk in the back door past his motorcycle collection that was sitting there, that he bought in that same year. Many of them that, when we were told we weren't getting bonuses and raises, like those optics as a leader are just like things you can't do.
No, just you're looking at your staff as a number, and that's not good.
And getting back to like the cultural, like not even like business culture, but like country cultural differences, right? I think the thing I've learned from cultural differences among people and cultures is like how different people react to leadership. Like, and I'm generalizing here, this isn't true of all people. But I found like in general, like my team members I've had in technology from India, they're a little bit more laid back. They're, kind of like go with the flow. I find that like my team members that, are from Asian countries, like China in particular. I've had a lot of team members from China. They're a little bit more uptight. And I think it's a cultural thing of expectations. And sometimes, you have to let them understand that, just to relax, that like, to not take everything so seriously. If we're like running a little bit behind on deadline, it's okay. Like, they put so much pressure on themselves. Like, you have to reassure them that things are going to be okay. I found that, like it's been really, really interesting. It's also interesting because I've worked in like, one of the places I worked was a blue collar shop. I was the operations manager. I was in charge of the shop, and like, working with, blue collar people. Like, my dad was blue collar people. He only went to 7th grade. He had to drop out of school to start working and helping the family out. Right. And that was during the Great Depression, like the 1930s. My dad was much older than my mom. Totally separate story. In like just seeing how that view of like how blue collar people perceive things, different than the people who are in the office environment. right? It's really interesting.
Oh, it is. It is. It's
And,
very
and it's like, and it's, I mean, some of it is part of like, they're not, they haven't been taught the uh, social expectations of working within an office atmosphere at a particular company sometimes. But many times it's like, they are generally lower paid, and what is a small thing for me making six figures at a company and it becomes a very big thing when you're making $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year, right? Like if the company is like, oh, we made a mistake on paychecks this week and we shorted everyone 10%,
right.
10% to me, I can float that. 10% someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, they can't float that, right? So there's just different ways people look at things based on their upbringings. It's really interesting.
It's very true.
I think that interpersonal dynamic is just so interesting in business and at companies.
It is. Yeah. And there always has to be a continual improvement process of yourself, the business, your staff. It's ever changing.
Yeah. And I think the thing people don't understand is you could have the best team on earth. Like say you have 8 people and you're all working together as this perfect machine in harmony. And then a new person comes in and your culture has just changed completely in that environment. There's a new norm that has to be found. It's not we're just going to insert this person like a sprocket in this system, right? They don't get just inserted. You have to kind of like disseminate that team a little bit and reharmonize with them in so they become a fully fledged member of that team. And I think that's difficult. And I think for like, it's probably really difficult for like a real estate office, right? Because you've got so many people and people coming and going. And it's hard to maintain that like team environment where everyone feels welcome and everyone feels part of the team.
Right. Yeah, you can see that in a lot of brokerages.
I feel like we take care.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, because I guess you could say we're cloud based, and there's a lot of them that are like that now, just where tech is gone, which is great. But there is something about being in person to create that culture. And this kind of goes back to that question we touched on earlier a little bit, was like, I thought about doing real estate because I went into law and I was like, I'm becoming an attorney, I had a paralegal degree. And then that shit the fan there, and like the guy closed up his doors. I'm like, what am I going to do? And so you just try to like, at 23, 24, and you're just trying to go, what's next? And I started evaluating, and I looked at real estate at that time and I was like, this is scary. No way. Like, you're telling me I'm going to go do this. And they wanted to charge, like the brokerage I looked at that time, there was all these additional fees. I was like, I was younger. My frontal cortex wasn't even developed yet. But even then, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Why would I pay 10 grand on top of everything else and then pay some other person this money too? Like, it was just wild. But now fast forward, now me, pivoting to this full-time career and being a business owner now in this industry, because of what I went through at these other jobs, has made it like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Why would I do that? Versus someone who, they just made that leap at maybe a younger age, and that's all they've ever, that framework and that structure, they think that that's it. It's very narrow, and you could find out that you're just not in a good culture, unintentionally, or that could deter you. Like you could have ended up becoming this fantastic real estate, or even own your own brokerage once upon a time, but because of one bad seed, what they built is just, it can destroy something.
I think the other thing too is people who start young in their career, like at a brokerage or at any company, and then it's more of a toxic type place, and then they go off on their own and start their own place. They never realize, because they've only had that one experience, that what they were in wasn't the best environment, and the people they learned from wasn't great. So now they've carried that culture and that toxicity into their new business, right? I think it's really difficult. You're talking about self-improvement. I think that's the biggest thing that people should take away, is that you always need continuous improvement, whether it's watching YouTube videos and learning things, I think that's the problem with kind of like bigger society in our world. Like everyone's siloed. Like, I'm a Republican and these are my views. I'm a Democrat. These are my views. Like, you and I differ politically on many aspects, but we can still be friends. We can still respect each other and get along and hang out. Like, but
you have open dialogue.
We can joke around, call each other morons about certain things, but I think that's kind of something that's gone in our culture, that people don't look beyond what they don't test their own beliefs, whether it's their own knowledge. Like, when I was a kid, there were 9 planets in our solar system, as an example, and now there's 8, right? So that's I'm still bitter about Pluto, but that's a belief that got tested and it was found to be incorrect, and science adjusted. And like people need to do that in their own lives. They need to look at what do I know, what do I need to know, what should I know, and continually find and learn and how to do things and take in new opinions and new views. And then you assimilate these into your own. And, like I might listen to someone who's like completely different politically than I am, right? And I may get a couple nuggets, right, of information, just like when I go to a seminar. I don't expect a seminar on photography or business or leadership to change my life, but you get a couple nuggets, those ones you write in your notebook, right? And those little nuggets that you get from them, it helps you become a more well-rounded person, and it helps you just relate to the world in a different way.
I agree.
But yeah, it's like we silo. Everything is siloed, and technology is meant to silo us. The algorithms serve up what you want to see, and that's not what you need to see.
No, yeah. And I find some people sometimes they'll make like egregious claims, and it's often more anecdotal rather than actual facts. Or with now AI now and people just putting stuff out to get views and likes, it's just false. It's not even, and they'll formulate this belief, and then they're so dead set on that opinion that you're just like, whoa, I'm just trying to talk. And thinking back to like when we were at Vanguard, that was such a fun experience because, if it was on the hunting side where it's hunters, activists for guns. And so, you might, great. Even though like conservatives and liberals are on both walks of life and in that realm, but like we're wearing hats on that one moment, and then we're going to the photo video world or like a birding. And
it was the most challenging marketing job I've ever had, and just people job, because you had 3 main markets. They had hunting that they served with, they would sell rifle scopes, hunting backpacks, binoculars to hunters. And then they had birders who they would sell like binoculars to people that wanted to go watch birds and never wanted a bird to get harmed. And then, hunters who want to basically shoot anything they can eat, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I can eat that. I'm going to shoot that. And then you have, the photographers who were generally a very liberal anti-gun crowd, right? And so you're basically on one website trying to market to these 3 people. So you can't say anything too much one way. And the hunting crowd that we had, it was a lot of influencers that were very strong 2A Second Amendment people, right? So you also had to be careful there. And it was just so incredibly challenging trying to segment that marketing and make sure. I remember the first time I sent out an email there, it was 250,000 people on a mailing list. And I was like checking it and sweating. I was literally sweating through my clothing. So I was like, oh God, did we like accidentally put something hunting out to like the photography crowd? Because like the same tripods that photographers would use for shooting photos, basically a hunter will put like a mount on there for their gun and go hog hunting, right? And so like all these products had dual purpose, and it was so entertaining to work in that market.
It was.
And me, I tend to be more of a liberal thinking person, more of a I'm very much libertarian, liberal, and just believe like, do your own thing. Like don't, as long as you're not harming anyone, do whatever you want kind of thing. And, take care of other people, be kind. And I remember like, I would have to like hide a lot of that because I didn't want to get labeled by that industry as some like crazy liberal person, because then the hunting crowd would stop buying from us. Right. But what's funny is I am that hunting crowd. I was out turkey hunting this weekend, right? I just last night I butchered up a turkey for my dogs. Was cooking up the meat from wild turkey.
And well, like you're saying, it's technology, cell phones, social media. People aren't having that human interaction, that connection. They're very siloed, and they can connect more to the world through the phone, but that's not connecting to the world. That's not having this open dialogue. And I know I've called and joked, and I've had that issue in the dating world because, you try to do this dating app thing and people will put on this facade of who they want to be, and they'll connect all day long by trying to text. And it's like pen pal, you don't want that. Like, let me just go on a walk and connect with you. But I've seen it sometimes where it's difficult for them to do this. Yeah. And it's sad because it's just like, how do you can't save the world. You can't pull one out, but you just hope people click at the right time before it's too late for them.
I am so happy I got married before the whole dating app thing. I remember my first time I got engaged. Well, it's not like I've been engaged millions of times. I've been engaged twice. The first person I was ever engaged to was back in like the 90s. And we met on AOL in a chat room, right? And back then chat rooms were huge. This is before like the internet or when the internet first came out.
I remember AOL.
And so like everyone thought it was the weirdest thing. Like online, being someone online was like just so strange. Anyway, we wound up dating for several years and we got engaged and we just realized we were different people and it didn't work out. She's a great person. So we wound up going our separate ways. And then I met my wife and, through my fraternity brother made me the godfather, her the godmother, tried to set us up that way with his children and it worked out. And, but I can't imagine being like in that world where I have to market myself online. Like I'm a chubby guy. I'm bald. I'm chubby. Like it's everything that like from the world we live in where image matters so much. It's like I would have a really hard time marketing myself to people online because that's what dating apps are. They're looking at photos, right? Yeah. Like we need to create a dating app that has no photos. It's all about the person.
Yeah, it doesn't let you upload a photo if it's got any filters applied to it. Like,
yeah, no, it doesn't allow photos at all. It's all about like I think I have an next idea. I really know idea. We'll get other people in on it, but like it's basically just about you as a person, right? They get like a one-page summary, like an elevator pitch of you as a person.
You do, yeah.
And then they have to make a decision based on that, not on your looks.
Based on that, and that's when they should unlock the photos or something.
And because I see a lot of my female friends are single in their 30s and 40s, and like I can't find a good man, and I'm like, I know a lot of good guys, but they're not the most attractive dudes from what society says. They're a little bit geeky, right? But like they have good jobs and they would love someone but like they're single as well because we live in this world where everything's based on visuals.
It is. Right? Oh, sex appeal sells. I mean, I know we've talked joked about it. It's like if I go to post something even in like real estate realm and it's like me versus some very attractive blonde girl, like I'm not going to beat that post. That's going to get 10 times more view than me. But that's just where it's grown into. Yeah. And it's nothing against that girl, whoever that girl may be, but it's the same thing and it transitions everywhere.
So, okay, this is really funny because we're talking about this like visual world. So this, you being a realtor, I must encourage anyone who's a realtor listening to this to go, or anyone in general, go to the Chicago Roommates group on Facebook. So I got a job and it's based in Chicago. So I'm there several days a week. So I got an apartment. I was looking for an apartment in Chicago. Originally I was going to get one where I had like traditional roommates where you like share an apartment. I want to find this really cool co-living arrangement they have in big cities where like I have my own master suite and I just share a kitchen and living room with other people, which is awesome. And it's super affordable for a big city. But when I was looking, they have this Chicago Roommates group. And it's like Tinder for roommates. Like it's everyone posting slutty photos of themselves, men or women. And it's all like, oh, me in Ibiza, me in Paris. And they're all like, like bodies hanging out and stuff. And, and you're like, I'm like, I don't even think I could apply for an apartment on this. Like, or look for a roommate because I'm fugly. Like, and they're all young people.
Start to set
right?
yourself out.
Yeah, like it's just funny, but like if anyone wants a really good thing, like if you're in the real estate business, go check out the Chicago Roommates group. I'm sure other cities have this too, but it's basically like a meat market for roommates because the way people post photos. I don't think, and here's the thing, I think young people look at it differently. I don't think they subconsciously think they're marketing themselves like a meat market, but that's how people perceive them, right? But like I think people are so accustomed to just being in photos and videos. Like me being an older person, I'm like, I don't want to be in a photo, right? Like. I was always behind the camera. And so, but young people, like, they live their whole lives in front of the camera. It's just so interesting. It's worth checking out.
It's a hard balance, even saying like behind the camera, because even in this industry and really any business ownership, like if you haven't built something that's like a large company yet and you're starting up, just talking on in real estate is you do got to be on social media because that is one of the how you're going to market yourself. And you can get so caught up. If you're doing it every day, I mean, they do say post multiple times a day. I think Gary Vee says like 20 times a day, which is insane.
Yeah.
But you have to have business discipline to where you have a calendar time blocked out that says, okay, this day of this month, I'm going to create content. I'm going to schedule this all out and then I'm not touching it because then now before you know it, I don't even know. It's like the plague. It just grab you, soak you up. And next thing you know, you are like, oh, I got to go do this. And you're just like, what am I doing? You lose who you are.
Yeah, and the number one thing I can tell people about social content is never be reactive. Like people want to react. I remember the managing partner at Fineo, like we'd have customers posting negative stuff about us sometimes because we legitimately screwed up. I mean, one time we sent a wedding order that was supposed to be sent to someone in like South Carolina or Germany by mistake. I mean, the wrong shipping label gets slapped on the wrong box, right? It just happens. But there was always this want to react to it. And the one thing like you have to learn about our culture is, and our 24-hour news cycle, is that everything just disappears so quickly. Like, so if there's some scandal in your business that's happening today, unless it's something really huge, right? Like it's fraud or something, like something illegal, or it's fraud, or it's like someone's accusing you of like inappropriate sexual contact or coming on to them or something inappropriately. Like those are different. Those are serious PR crises. But like, a general like, poor comment someone leaves or review, like there's no need as a business owner. We take it so personally when we own a business that they're personally hurting us.
Right.
And that's not their intention all the time. And so we need to take a step back and not react. And then lots of times by tomorrow it's gone, or the next day it's gone, and it just moves on that cycle. And what the hot issue is on the internet today doesn't matter tomorrow. And, and I think I guess I would use like the movements we've seen recently, whether it be No Kings or Black Lives Matter or all these other movements that have been out on the internet. Like, yeah, they're really big for a week and then they just disappear. It's like, do Black Lives not matter anymore? Like it's like everyone just goes back to the next hot issue, right?
Yeah, everyone's lives matter, but it's just the current hot issue.
Exactly. It's the hot issue of the moment. And people get so uptight and so upset about it. It's like, just let it go. Ignore it. It's going to disappear. I'm not saying the underlying issue isn't important, but the hype online and the arguments and how hot people get, that'll disappear.
Right. The news stations, they want those views and the viewership to satisfy those companies that are sponsoring ads. And that's where we've seen it. I remember, it was Trump's first term. I can't remember if you were with me, but I was down at the NRA show in Texas. And it was the first open eye to this other part. Like it exists in our world, which is crazy, but it's like you don't think it does until you're exposed to it. And I had like my mother called me and she's like, "Hey, be careful! Like there's protesters, because you see the bad on the news." Yeah. And I was talking to her, and I was walking in the building. I was like, "Mom, there's no protesters. There's no one around. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
And they had a protester block, which is fine. That's your right as an American to protest, but it was like 2 miles away, and so the news media was taking that, splicing that together to create this illusion for everyone who's at the couch at home. Yeah. But the same thing, even though like, yep, I hunt, I love guns. But the NRA was doing the same, the NRA News was doing the same thing inside, but vice versa to that way they can please their viewers. So it happens all the time. Yeah. So whether it's a movement or something else, it's to create that hype and that animosity. Yeah. And to get that voters.
It's really scary now with AI and the fake photos you can make, but it's not a new trend. Like even with traditional film photography, I could make something look bigger or more important than it was by how I shot it from a certain angle, right? Like you go and you shoot a crowd of people, like picture a crowd of people of 10 people on a basketball court, right? I go up on the top level of the gym and I shoot down and they look tiny in the middle of the basketball court. I come down in that crowd, shoot with a wide angle lens, and now it looks like the entire gym is filled with people, right? And that's what news media and other people can do at these sorts of events is they can lie with how they shoot things, the angle, the perspective, right? And so everyone's worried about AI, and I think AI is going to make it easier for everyone.
But it's already existed.
But it's already been there. It's been out forever, right?
Yeah. So why it's interesting, like you said, why does that still matter? And it does matter to a lot of people, but it doesn't matter to the main, that news station or that journalist, whatever it may be. Yeah. And even the one that's been interesting, you see, like I'm a Christian myself, and I remember, I want to say 3 years ago, let's say, like the news stations never wanted to touch anything about or talk about or be a proponent. Yeah. And now because there's enough movement behind, you see Fox News and CNN and all of them are like talking, like, look at this, glorification that this and that, like it's like pro Christianity, which is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's intriguing that at one point they were like, nope, we can't talk about this. But now that we can justify still getting our ad spend, we're going to talk about it.
Well, it also helps that like CNN was bought by a more conservative person. Yeah. But what I find interesting too, in that Fox News used to be the like the most conservative news media, right?
Right.
It's one you'd laugh that your grandpa listened to, because it's where old people listen. But now, like, they're like the liberal end of the conservative media because people have gone on the other end. And Fox News is correcting the story many times what other people are saying. And it's just so interesting, like a perspective. And that goes again to just educating yourself and knowing what you're listening. You mentioned how you're a Christian, you go to church. You couldn't pay me to go into a church.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, unless I'm like shooting a wedding, you're not getting me in a church unless you pay me thousands of dollars, right? I just don't believe in that. I don't believe I have to go to church to feel like connected to some greater power. And so, but we can still be friends. We can respect each other. And this is what the world needs more of.
I agree.
People with differences, just like, I can respect that you want to church. If you were going to go to church on Sunday, we were going to hang out and be like, okay, what time are you done? So
yeah, no, that's what I like is creating that. And I think that's kind of a good basis to this is that, be a good human.
Yeah.
And create good friendships, and people are going to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think, like if I were to leave everyone with just a thought is don't be an a-hole. That's how I try and live my life. And that's how I recommend, like just how would you like others to treat you? And the other thing I've really learned is you never know what someone else is going through in their own life. Like that person that, maybe was a little rude to you or like, they might be having a really bad day. You never know. So like just be respectful to everyone. Don't be an a-hole and treat others like you want to be treated. It's probably the best way to be.
Well, I'm glad we can make this happen.
I'm glad as well. This is fun.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.